Good evening. Welcome to the September 7th Town of Clifton Park Town Board meeting. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Teresa, if you call the roll.
Councilwoman Flood. Here. Councilwoman Sandor. Here. Councilman Morelli.
Here.
Councilwoman Wallowit. Here. Supervisor Barrett.
Here.
Yes. 8:16.
Entertain a motion to approve Town Board meeting minutes of 8:16.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Wallowitz, second by Mrs. Standard. Discussion. Okay. Teresa?
Councilwoman Flood.
Yes.
Councilwoman Sandor.
Yes.
Councilman Morelli.
Yes.
Councilwoman Wallowit. Yes. Supervisor Barrett.
Yes. Communications and announcements. Just have a few things I want to mention. One, I want to thank Kevin Herder, his family, and friends and volunteers. They had a great event here Saturday on the Common. It was called the 518 Hoop Fest, and great to see Kevin return. He's been in the NBA now for a few years. Incredible accomplishment, and there were a lot of people here wanting to meet him, get his autograph, get a picture, or maybe just watch. There were a number of, there was around 150 participants in on-court activities, and they certainly had a great time as well. So it was a very successful event. And subsequent discussions with Kevin and the family, and I think they'd like to make this an annual event here on the Common. We would certainly welcome that based on the great time had by all. Today we had an interesting situation over on Carlton Road. I don't know what it is about Carlton Road this year, but it's had its share of challenges. And today a tractor trailer was lodged underneath the bridge. The bridge is for the railroad, and CP Rail Police were there. Spoke with them for a while, but it did take a few hours. But they moved the cargo that was in the tractor trailer to another truck, took it away. Once they completed that, and there were a fair number of pallets in the back of the truck. Once they completed that task, they were able to fairly easily remove the truck from the overpass and get it out of the way. And it was a little after 5 o'clock when the road was reopened. So took a few hours, no structural damage to the bridge as they could find, and the road's open. And there are signs there. Obviously, in our sister community over here in Glenville, they've had this happen many a time on that one bridge. Just as you're moving out of Clifton Park into Glenville. And I really hope that this does not become a regular affair. But like I said, there are large signs there. There are directions that the drivers are required to take. And obviously, taking Carlton Road is not a good idea for any tractor trailer. So that's that accident today was did not cause any long-lasting damage. Hopefully, again, we don't have this situation occur again. As a member of the Capital District Transportation Committee Policy Committee, I voted to move forward some money that will be invested by DOT, and that money will be to further planning efforts for improvements along the 146 corridor. There'll be $5 million that's available for planning efforts at 146 and Clifton Country Road. and now $7 million for Route 146 and Route 9, which is the intersection just east in the town of Half Moon. So those are two intersections that are in need of updating and upgrading. The Department of Transportation understands that, and moving this money forward for those efforts is a very important step. Once that planning is completed, we'll have an idea of the options available to DOT based on many factors as part of their research and an assessment of current conditions and future needs. So we'll remain in contact with DOT and their planners as they progress, and we'll report back with details as they become available. But very important step forward to make sure that we get some upgrades at those intersections. I want to thank Sean Parent from Pendleton Signs. He had contacted Dan over at Buildings and Grounds about wanting to donate a sign to the town of Clifton Park, and we were in the process of replacing the Barney Road golf course sign. So that was the one that was referred to him. He accepted, and we have a new sign at the golf course. So I do want to publicly thank Sean for that donation. Hazardous Waste Day is coming up on the 25th, so please sign up. You can do so on the Hazardous Waste Day tab, which is on the right side of the cliftonpark.org homepage. Click that tab, and then you'll see a series of time frames come up, along with helpful information about what is accepted and what is not. But you can click on the time of your choosing and register for the event. You'll get a confirming email sent back to you. So again, that's Hazardous Waste Day on the 25th. We expect it to be rather busy, and it's a great opportunity to get rid of those hazardous materials and chemicals in a safe and expedient manner, and a frugal manner, since it's free. So you will not be charged for the items that you bring. Also want to mention Shred Day is coming up on October 3rd. So we do Shredding Day, where you can have all your sensitive documents shred. All we ask for in return is a donation of non-perishable food items for the Jonesville Food Pantry. We've been doing this event for many years in the spring and fall. So October 3rd, it's going to be in the same location, parking lot of the Clifton Park Center, over between Boscov's and the old Chevrolet dealership, over in that area, 1 to 3. Again, we thank 3N Document Destruction for their partnership on that event again. From the very beginning, 3N has supported that event. So, just want to mention a few things there of upcoming items and important updates. Anyone else?
Yes.
Yes, Mrs. Sandar.
Thank you. About 3 weeks ago, on August 17th, one of our town buildings had a fire. And there was significant damage. We lost a couple of vehicles. But I'm mentioning it because with town hall staff and their response and firefighter response, the damage could have been a lot more. I know, Lori, you were one of the people who quickly responded, as did Steve Myers from our building department, who immediately called dispatch. He is a firefighter with the West Crescent Fire Department. And the response was incredible, and it was quick. We had 8 departments respond, and those departments that responded were West Crescent, Jonesville, Rexford, Fisher Ferry, Clifton Park, Half Moon, Malta Ridge, and Bell from the town county. Watching the response was incredible. These men and women from the fire department. It was a very hot, humid day. Full gear, doing whatever it took to stop that fire. So I just wanted to publicly thank all of the first responders and the firefighters who came to assist in that situation. And I want to thank town hall employees for their quick thinking and their response, Lori and Steve and many others who did not hesitate to make the phone calls that needed to be made. So thank you. That's all I have.
I think Steve changed into his gear right away. Right away, grabbed his gear, and before he left for the day, he saw what was happening, grabbed his gear, and went to work.
Mike O'Brien as well. He's also our sewer department director, and he had his gear with him as well. And even though his building is not right here next to where the fire occurred, his response was just as fast because he had his gear right in front as well. So many town hall employees, I know there's several from the highway department who are also fire department members, and really it was truly an incredible response. So I'm very grateful to them. I know all of us up here are very grateful for them and their response and how they really mitigated a lot of what could have been some serious damage. So sorry about your vehicles, Dan, but you know, I think it really could have been a lot worse.
Two's better than 7.
Yeah. Well put.
Well, and the important thing too was nobody was injured, which both from the fire and personnel, town personnel, and thankfully none of the firefighters were injured either. A couple of them were treated by Clifton Park EMS just briefly due to the heat, because when they went upstairs, I mean, it was hot standing on the ground outside. You go upstairs in that building, it was incredibly hot. So, well done. Yes.
It was brought up at the SAP meeting this week, and of course, we were there first. You know, Jonesville, I guess, was the first one to see. And he said when he pulled up, the first thing he saw was the 2 gas tanks. And again, you know, if you think about the proximity of the building and the 2 gas tanks, the highway building in this building, it's hard to hurt if you're firefighter. But all of them were out, and some on the road and some in the building, and everyone took part. And considering how much worse it could have been, we did have a big loss. And I miss that building. It's so sad driving by there. But I'm glad that it turned out really good and everyone was safe.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that saved us was that they said that for some odd reason the fire wasn't getting enough oxygen. And the thing I can get back to is I believe Mark once said that we were spending too much on heat, so we went and weatherized the building. So we may have weatherized the building so much that the fire couldn't get enough oxygen. So Mark, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Hey, anyone else?
I just have a couple announcements. First, I want to thank the town board for the support for the construction on the Rooms Tavern. I think, Dan, are we still waiting for the roof on the porch to be done? Everything else is done.
Everything else is done except for that. Roofing material should be here this week. As soon as it gets here, we're gonna get right after that. Of course, weather dependent.
Yeah. But it looks beautiful, and they have a lot of upcoming events. I know John Shearer, Thomas Duran is doing a lecture on Friday night. They're having a tag sale and a quilt exhibit during Farm Fest on the 18th and 19th of September. Everyone's been busy cleaning the inside and getting the quilts ready. And also on the 26th, from noon to 5, the Small Museum Historical Day. So that's another thing that's coming up. So there's a lot of events happening at the tavern, and we're really excited about all the activities. Hope everybody can stop by.
Very good. Yeah, it does look good. Thanks, Dan. Buildings and Grounds for working on that and getting it to this point. They did make quick work of the roof so far, and they worked fairly quickly on the porch as well. So it was fast, seemingly a well done job, and building's in much better shape now. All right, we certainly don't want to let this time go past without remembering that we're coming up on September 11th, which is now 20 years 20 years since that fateful day that has significantly affected every part of our lives ever since. And did you say?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I thought that it was, there's a resolution on tonight, and I thought it was really important for us to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. I know it's something that I have never forgotten. I was at the time very close to the attacks. I was about an hour away, and still remember the clothes that I was wearing. But I wanted to make sure that we had this resolution on tonight as a reminder that these are conversations that 20 years later we need to keep having. I know I have these conversations with my kids, reminding them or sharing with them the feelings of that day, and not just about the feelings immediately after the attack and the fear, the frightened feeling that we all had, but the feeling of unity that we all had on September 12th, the day after. We came together as a nation, and I think that that is, unfortunately, we have strayed from that a little bit. We are one country, and we are all together in this. And I think that that's very important to remember, and I think it's very important for us to share with our kids. So, really happy that we've got this resolution commemorating the 20th anniversary of that terrible day.
It's certainly amazing that it's been 20 years. I mean, we say it all the time. Time flies, time goes quickly, but it is hard to believe that it's been 20 years now. I don't think any of us will forget where we were when we heard the news, how we ran to the nearest TV to see what exactly was happening, and we're all devastated once we completely understood the loss of human life and the heroes that were made that day. So it's and now leaving Afghanistan as a country, and that war that we've been fighting for 20 years. A lot of heroes have been identified very clearly during the last 20 years as well. And we can never thank those people enough. The people that ran into the buildings as others are running out, the people that have served overseas, given life, limb, and sometimes the ultimate sacrifice for this country. So, Teresa, if you would read the resolution, please. Yes. Yep.
Resolution number 203 of 2021, a resolution commemorating the 20th anniversary of September 11th, 2001 attacks. Whereas on September 11th, 2001, the United States of America endured the worst terrorist attack on its soil in the nation's history. And whereas at the World Trade Center site in Lower Manhattan, 2,753 people, including 343 New York City firefighters, 23 New York City police officers, and 37 New York Port Authority officers were killed when hijacked American Airlines Flight 11 and United Airlines Flight 175 were intentionally crashed into the North and South Towers, which subsequently collapsed. And whereas at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., 184 people were killed when hijacked American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the building. And whereas near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, 40 passengers and crew members aboard United Airlines Flight 93 died when the plane crashed into a field after the passengers and crew attempted to retake control of the flight deck. And whereas since the attacks, over 2,000 first responders and volunteers at the site of the World Trade Center have perished due to 9/11 related illnesses. And whereas in response to this tragedy, Americans across the country came together in a remarkable spirit of patriotism and unity, carrying out countless acts of kindness, generosity, and compassion. And whereas on December 18, 2001, Congress designated September 11th as Patriot Day, calling on state and local governments and the people of the United States to observe Patriot Day with the appropriate programs and activities. And whereas surviving members, family members of September 11th victims and community organizations began observing the anniversary of September 11th as a charitable service day to honor the memory of those who were lost and those who united in response to the tragedy, including first responders and volunteers. And whereas the Serve America Act, provided by Congress and enacted into law on April 21st, 2009, directed September 11th to be observed and recognized as an annual National Day of Remembrance, of Service and Remembrance. And whereas participating in the service and remembrance activities on September 11th is a positive and respectful way to remember the lives of those lost, pay tribute to those who rose in service, and honor those who continue to serve our country today, including active military and reserve military and their families, veterans, police, fire, and emergency medical services. And whereas September 11th National Day of Service and Remembrance activities are being organized by a variety of nonprofits, faith-based and community groups, public agencies, educational institutions, private businesses, and other organizations across the nation. And whereas September 11th National Day of Service and Remembrance is an opportunity to respond where the need is greatest, coming together to lift our communities up. Now therefore be a result, the town board encourages everyone to take a moment in their day and pause and honor the lives of those lost by participating in community service and remembrance ceremonies on this day and throughout.
I move that we approve the resolution with a second by Lieutenant Warden.
Councilwoman Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standart?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wallowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Barron?
Yes. You know, those that have gone before us, you know, always carry on the messages of things that happened while they were alive and we weren't. And you heard about so many things growing up from your family, friends, aunts, uncles, whoever it might be, telling you about significant events in American history that happened while they were alive. And I think it's our job to make sure that we keep the we also play our part in that, explaining to those that come after us who are not even alive during 9/11, 2001, that everything that happened, and just making sure that we're relaying history as we lived it to those folks. It's very important, and I'm sure that's something we will all do. We also had a terrible situation that occurred recently as our servicemen and women were leaving Afghanistan. We're in the process of leaving Afghanistan. There were 13 men and women that were killed. Fortunately, we had gone about a year and a half without a situation like this occurring, and unfortunately we did have an attack recently, and those 13 brave souls gave the ultimate sacrifice for our country. They are Sergeant Darren Hoover, Joanny Rosario Pichardo, Sergeant Nicole G., Corporal Hunter Lopez, Corporal Dagan Page, Corporal Humberto Sanchez, Marine Corps Lance Corporal David Espinoza, Marine Corps Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz, Marine Corps Lance Corporal Riley McCullum, Marine Corps Lance Corporal Dylan Marola, Marine Corps Lance Corporal Kareem McCooey, Navy Hospitalman Maxton Sobiak, and Army Staff Sergeant Ryan Knotts. So those are the names of the 13 brave souls who recently gave the ultimate sacrifice for our country. All right. If there's nothing further, we'll begin a public hearing tonight, and it's on the proposed amendments to our town code for solar energy systems. John, if you would. Yes, please.
Town of Clifton Park, County of Saratoga, State of New York, notice of public hearing regarding proposed zoning amendments for the solar energy systems within Clifton Park. Please take notice that the town board of the town of Clifton Park will conduct a public hearing on September 7th, 2021 at 7:10 p.m. in the Wood Memorial Meeting Room in the Town Hall Office Building located at 1 Town Hall Plaza, Town of Clifton Park, County of Saratoga, State of New York, to consider a proposed local law amending zoning regulations for the allowance of solar energy systems and facilities within the town. The proposed legislation would establish a three-tiered system to categorize solar energy systems and equipment based on their capacity and authorize their construction in additional zoning districts within the town. Larger ground-mounted systems would be subject to special use permit analysis in the residential, corporate, commerce zone, light industrial, and hamlet zones, and space and bulk requirements for each zone. Special use permitting requirements are expanded to include visual impacts, including glare, screening and landscaping, and impacts to prime agricultural resources. Copies of the proposed local law are posted on the website and are available for review in the town clerk's office during normal business hours. And this was in the August 18th edition of the Schenectady Gazette.
All right, John, if you would.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Barrett, town board members. What I'd like to do is just point out, I have a map here showing the solar projects with a star to date. These are all approved and built community solar projects that we have. As you can see, they're concentrated in western Clifton Park because that's where the large tracts of open space are found. So that has been the area that's been looked at. The other areas where we allow ground-mounted solar would include the residential R1 areas, which are mostly built out. So one of the recommendations is to potentially allow ground-mounted solar in the industrial and B5 zone up in this area. That could help take some of the pressure off of the corporate commerce zone. These stars aren't indicative of a proportional build-out. For example, the Ashtown Road project, which was the first solar project, was on an 85-acre parcel. Just over 3 acres were carved out for an existing home, and the array is about 20 acres. So there's approximately, I think there's 64 acres of open space around that array. The arrays on Sugar Hill Road, one's 27 acres on Tom Hicks's land, right down here. But again, if we look at his contiguous land holdings, it's 27 acres on 165 acres total land that was owned. Same thing with the other project on Sugar Hill Road. It's 60 acres, of which 6 acres is occupied by a community solar array. So again, the stars aren't proportional to the actual array size, but it gives you an idea of the vicinity of where the build out was. Looking at the community solar laws, they were adopted under provisions that allowed for ground-mounted solar arrays by the town in 2011. That was prior to New York State allowing for the definition of community solar in 2015. Since then, there's a New York State solar guidebook, a New York State model solar energy law dated 2016, both of which the town of Clifton Park participated in to develop as a model for New York State. A lot of what's reflected in the updated code language is based on the recommendations in that solar guidebook. Looking at solar energy systems, our definition spoke to ground-mounted systems, but some of the confusion, I guess, discussions at the planning board level amongst the public planning board members of how do you classify a solar energy collector? It's collecting, harnessing energy from the sun. Is it producing the energy? Or is it a passive collector? A lot of back and forth about, or is it a power plant? So there is a definition for solar energy systems that New York State has put out. It is based on some national guidance that was also provided by the Federal Energy Commission. And part of our definition update would They include solar energy systems. We're proposing to break it out into a 3-tiered system. Tier 1 solar energy systems, which are your typical roof-mounted residential arrays for the individual on-site consumer. Tier 2 systems, which are up to 25 kilowatt. Again, we have a couple examples of Tier 2 systems in the town on commercial establishments. If you were to go to Google Earth and look at Target, for example, that roof, I believe, has about 2,000 panels on top of that building. Same thing with Meridian's Furniture and Concord Pools. They support 100% of the energy use through these larger systems on their site. And then Tier 3 systems, which would be 25 kilowatts or larger, would account for community solar. The other things that we considered is the structures are considered accessory because the primary uses are residential in these zones. So the accessory setback provisions applied. When you're talking a solar array in a large tract of land, it just doesn't seem economies of scale to treat it the same as if somebody's putting up an accessory pole barn or accessory residential structure. So part of the update also includes setback requirements specific to ground-mounted solar arrays. So for example, I believe in the CR zone, we're increasing the front yard setback to 100 feet. Same thing with R1 and R3, which today we have not seen any arrays in those zones. In the light industrial zones, we're proposing a 50-foot setback to try to encourage those type of areas for solar development going forward. Same thing with the rear yards and side yards in the residential zones. They're being increased to 100 feet around, and there's also minimum lot size requirements that have been introduced. Maximum size, the height's 15 feet, will be defined is based on the tilt requirements of the panel. Typically, you don't see these arrays exceed 12 feet. We're also speaking to minimizing tree cutting as much as possible, giving flexibility to the planning board in terms of size and scale in context of the surrounding area, to what level a site may be cleared, to look at the individual unique circumstances. And one example I would give is the Grooms Road array. Right here is the only example of a community solar project right now in our R1 district. There was support from adjacent residents because knowing with water and sewer access and stub streets that were existing to the Wishing Well neighborhood, the potential was there to continue that Wishing Well neighborhood into that Grooms Road site. So when the neighbors, heard all the opportunities here for solar, will welcome that as our new neighbors, knowing that our neighborhood streets will continue to stay dead ends and not continue with the paper streets that were originally laid out. Consequently, that's the most visible out of all the sites. The CR zone has provided some opportunities to supplement or preserve some mature vegetation to screen the solar arrays out there. The Grooms Road site was more of an open field that if it went to traditional R1 neighborhood development, we would be seeing the homes there today. In addition to that, the planning board and town staff, while we've looked at glare, we've looked at lighting, we've looked at fence requirements, habitat gaps, wildflower seed mixes, we're just codifying in this code update the abilities to lay out in the actual code language that these are criteria that the planning board would be looking at as part of its deliberations going forward. In addition to that, I would like to also note we do provide definitions for prime farmland and farmland of statewide importance. It's a balancing act because you hate to see trees cut down, but I can tell you with the Hubs Road site, where there's about 7-8 acres of trees that have been cut down, if we look at the soils map, those trees lie in an area where the soils map shows the soil type really isn't conducive to farming. So that's why in that location, they propose to supplement our income and to keep the farm fields that are up front here along Shaver Road, to utilize those lands that weren't conducive to farming. It's a trade-off. You know, there's pros and cons to both sides. The state is obviously taking a position that the carbon benefits and reduction in greenhouse gas emissions produced by a community solar project outweigh any negative impacts of the loss of some of these successional growth forests. That's, you know, and I will read a headline today. Governor Hochul announces $6 million for climate justice fellowships benefiting disadvantaged communities and priority populations. Basically, what community solar does is allow the residential populations within New York State, whether you're renting from a landlord, whether you're living in a 4- or 5-story building, the ability to subscribe and benefit from green energy production sites such as community solars located throughout upstate New York for the most part. The state does have some pretty ambitious goals. The first goal is by 2040 to have a zero emission electric sector, including 70% renewable energy generation by 2030. That's just 9 years away, and that's to reach an economy-wide carbon what they call neutrality. One of the things that we haven't done in New York State pursuant to Seeker, but you'll see in the New England states, is when they actually look at the environmental impacts that could be generated from any one product, they have to quantify what's known as VOx, NOx, and carbon emissions associated with that project, and they're actually on a state level required to offset the carbon emissions as a result of the growth. I do see the needle going that way for New York State. We're not there yet, but that's where those discussions are going on a state and federal policy level. So it's just something I'm aware of. Some going forward planning and land use considerations on how to adapt and adjust to additional considerations. The other thing is, in New York State, there's the desire to produce 9,000 megawatts of offshore wind by 2035. That's basically in the Long Island Sound area. Those projects are currently being reviewed at the federal and state and local levels, which, you know, equates to a strong workforce sector. The latest estimates are about 150,000 jobs in some form or fashion are tied to New York clean energy sector initiatives. And they're saying that since 2011, so 10 years, the distributed solar sector within New York State has seen a 2,100% increase in growth. So if we look at green energy megawatts, what's been developed, again, this has all happened within the last decade. So in 2011, that's when that stat first came out. It's when this town first looked at ground-mounted solar array as a standalone definition. So now, 2015 legislation is enacted for community solar. We can see the projects we've had to date. Other communities through upstate New York are seeing similar development patterns. There were hosting capacity maps that the power companies were required to put out that were supposed to give us a map or blueprint of our hosting capacities. What we found is they're highly inaccurate. The grid has not been updated in over 100 years. And if we looked at those hosting capacity maps, by our third project, we were maxed out. So we can see the projects that we have today.
Found out rather quickly that
Yes.
wasn't the case.
Yes, and what we're finding is it's just not New York. There's 9 states that require hosting capacity maps. 5 of those states are going back, scratching their heads saying, these maps aren't working. They're not working. The true capacities of our grid system is not known. And part of that is the lack of infrastructure updates to our energy grid system and the inability to modernize the grid system to a microgrid system that provides for redundancy and resiliency through significant weather events. With that, I can say there has been a lot of written comments provided over the course of these projects and in the course of the moratorium. They're all part of the project file. Willing to answer any questions the board may have or the public, and looking forward to hearing what the comments are this evening.
Great, thank you, John. We now have a decent amount of experience working with ground-mounted solar projects. As John mentioned, the town was asked to be part of a statewide working group to put together a unified solar permit for New York State. And that was back several years ago. And there continues to be a tremendous amount of money, public money, subsidizing green energy projects throughout the state. There's tens of millions of dollars at a time being used to subsidize green energy projects. So we have expected and continue to expect the pressure of green energy projects in local communities to increase over time. And this process was a way for us, as we've described multiple times, it was a way for us to pause at this point in the process after the experience that we've had, and review our code and ensure that we're adequately prepared for the future. I think a lot of the changes that John mentioned that New York State has made as far as different designations and how projects of varying types are assessed and identified is something very important to the update of our code as well. So we'll open for public hearing unless there's any questions from the board at this time. Okay, we'll open the public hearing. If you'd like to comment on this matter, please raise your hand. We'll ask that you come forward, state your name and address for the record, and please keep it to 5 minutes or less. Susan, how you doing?
I'm going to hand these out now. So we
Thank you.
My name is Susan Burton, 338 Riverview Road, Bishop Ferry. And I come here to this hearing as a member of Friends of Clifton Park Open Space. Friends has appeared before this board on previous occasions to speak on this topic of solar generation facilities and the need for updated guidance and regulations on this topic. We've asked the town for solar siting regulations, cited what other towns have done, and expressed our concerns about conditions and safeguards in the building, maintenance, and retirement of solar facilities. So we applaud the town's initiative for incorporating many of these concerns and for consolidating them in the proposed zoning regulations. However, we have additional ideas and concerns which are not addressed here. As early as August 2019, Friends expressed our appreciation of how the protection of open space, especially in the Western Conservation Residential or CR zone, has had the unexpected consequence of providing virgin territory for the proliferation of solar facilities. Furthermore, the initial placement of solar facilities was made seemingly without regard to any of the long-standing CR zoning standards required for this territory. Things like density formulas and open space set-aside requirements. Solar is an industrial rather than a residential application for these spaces, but that only makes it more important to preserve the essential character of this part of town. In July 2020, Friends again reached out to express our concerns about having 7 solar projects approved, with 5 of them in the CR zone. We urged the town to establish a review process for these projects and are happy that this step has been taken. We understand both the need to encourage non-polluting sources of power and the advantages that such projects bring to large landowners in the area. But again, we stress the importance of not only applying CR guidelines to solar construction, but also applying density incentives in order to fund a means of countering the loss of open space. Our town citizens have consistently and widely supported such initiatives. At this time, we would like to commend the process the town has started in order to understand and channel the advantages of solar generation with these new zoning revisions. However, we continue to press for 2 items. First, a mechanism that would compensate the town for increases in density for the acres covered with solar panels beyond the limitations of the CR zoning code, similar to the amenities incentive payments that exist for residential projects. This mechanism could provide funding for preservation of other property in the CR zone and protect Western Clifton Park from becoming a density target for solar facilities. Second, these regulations note the necessity for a special use permit. The special use permit zoning code outlines community benefits and amenities to be considered before issuing a special use permit. The resolution before us tonight skips over this section. Considering how little regard the zoning board has given to this aspect of solar special use permits in the past, we feel strongly that community benefits and amenities should be given their due consideration, especially with such an extensive non-conforming use as solar. Members of this board, along with members of the planning department, have received our solar position paper in April 2021. That package outlined in more detail our thoughts and ideas, particularly on these last 2 items. We hope the board will give these ideas more solid consideration and incorporate them into the final version of the proposed revisions of the zoning code. Additionally, Friends recommends that the proposed regulations also consider these 5 suggestions. 1, Article 14-2, maximum height of Tier 3 systems does not address agricultural districts. The limit of 15 feet would not allow panels to be elevated for livestock to graze under them. 2, Article 14.6, it is not clear that vehicle paths should be included in the total acreage of the project. 3, Article 14.12, agricultural soil should be confirmed independently and certified by the owner. Number 4, regulations should encourage businesses and public institutions with large roof areas to install community solar systems. And 5, elevated solar arrays should be encouraged for large parking lot expanses. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Susan. One point that is made here, just quote real quick, conservation residential zoning standards required in this territory, things like density formulas and open space set aside requirements. And those are things that are in our code and have been for a number of years in an effort to continually preserve as much open space as possible. And there's been other options and tools given or utilized by the planning board, such as cluster zoning and other options to do the same. And,
Yeah, there
protect
are many good, really advisable provisions in that code.
Yeah, so
Hamlet design and conservation building architectural guidelines.
yeah, we've used many different options as a town board to preserve a tremendous amount of property in the last 20 years. Now, when I read that and think about those portions of our code, those are directly related to impacts. And the impacts are from development. So if there is, say, a housing development built, using the example John spoke of, there's direct impacts that can be identified and assessed, where if you have a solar farm, those impacts are not there. They're not evident at all. Once construction is done on the solar farm, it's the impacts that are identified in our code that would trigger density formulas and open space set-aside requirements are not there. So I think that's a very important point to remember. And I understand what you're saying. You're saying that there's a parcel of a certain acreage, and that the same formula that's used to protect open space should be used for solar installation. So I understand the thinking behind the point, but those impacts are not the same. Because once a solar farm is there,
the concerns are that one of the reasons we had the set-asides for open space and the density limitations was to preserve things like, water protection and connectivity and habitat and that kind of scenic vistas that are so prevalent in Western Clifton Park and that so many people value. So when you take those considerations into mind, solar generating facilities that go from edge to edge on a parcel kind of ignore those advantages that people are.
Well, I think John also gave examples where all of those factors are taken into account.
Well, I think there's land around the parcels that can be considered open, but the actual parcel that they're developing itself that they're considering is very seldom done. There's very seldom a set aside on that, or any density bonus, or any consideration given to the density that solar produces to offset, like the amenity zoning that would allow you to offset some of that by protecting other areas that are critical to connectivity and water resources and habitat.
Thank you.
This just goes.
Thank you. It's important to note that these projects do need to follow very stringent rules and regulations, just as any other project does. I think John gave some examples where those items are taken into account. But from a legal standpoint, when you trigger things in our code, areas of our codes that deal with density formulas and open space set-aside requirements, again, those are impacts that that you can legally account for when moving into that part of the code and assessing the requirements that will be expected of the applicant. Where a solar farm, those impacts do not exist. So I'm not sure legally you can call them impacts because those same impacts don't exist. John, I don't know if there's anything I'm leaving out of my answer there, but impacts such as traffic and other areas. John?
Yeah, what we tried to do is looking at the Western Clifton Park GEIS, all the impacts were relative to residential development growth, which included water, sewer use, extension of utilities, loss of green space, and traffic. What we tried to do with the update here is there's a section within the updates where we talk about visibility, tier 2 and tier 3 solar energy systems, including any and all solar energy equipment, shall have views minimized from public roads of adjacent properties to the extent reasonable, practical, using architectural features, earthen berms, landscaping, or other methods that will harmonize with the character of the property and surrounding area. The tier 3 application must provide a visual assessment of visual impacts of the solar energy system on public roadways and adjacent properties, depending on the scope and potential significance of the visual impacts. Additional visual analysis, including examples of digital viewshed reports, may be required. So what we're looking at there is holding the applicant's feet to the fire, that there are scenic vistas that are recognized, and there's priorities in the Western Clifton Park GEIS that's there that I think are enforceable under seeker, and the amendments with the special use permit that could dictate size and scale. We're not quantifying it into a formula because each individual site's very different and unique in its own features and characteristics. But that was the attempt there to address that.
But when you listed all the impacts, a solar array does not trigger any of those areas
In terms of water, sewer, traffic.
Yeah. So it's hard to say that we're going to treat solar farms the same as, say, a housing development, when one has identifiable impacts and the other doesn't. So that's the only point. John, are there any changes to requirements as far as the end of life of a system? Panels have a useful life of 20 to 25 years.
Yes, we've been following the decommissioning plan and requiring a decommissioning plan based on NYSERDA guidance that the town helped develop. So we get a decommissioning performance bond for the full value of what it would take to remove the array and system. That performance bond is put up and filed within the town clerk's office as part of the pilot agreement, part of the site plan and special use permit. We are actually codifying that decommissioning plan in our code because it's something that previously wasn't there. And it does speak to, and did have a conversation with a resident today relative to transfer of ownership as a concern, because there's companies that come in and build these arrays and then transfer the value as a holding an asset to another entity that then is bound by all the covenants, conditions, and restrictions. But we want to make sure that it's clearly articulated in the documentation, not just something that was discussed at the meeting, but it's enforceable going forward on the plans. Because decommissioning is a concern. What the technology is changing so fast that these 25, 30-year leases, we may have new technology in 10 years potentially propose to swap out some of these panels and arrays. So how is the recycling of these equipment going to be handled? Where is the proper disposal and handling of these equipment going forward? These are issues, again, beyond Clifton Park, but to be looked at the state and federal level, in addition to our local level. The resident today made a great suggestion, making sure that they don't end up in our local waste stream, because then that's a further impact. And that was an excellent suggestion for decommissioning plans going forward. So.
Okay. And as far as agricultural soils, and that topic, New York State gets involved in that issue, don't they?
They do. New York State Ag and Markets has reviewed all the plans that have been located in the Consolidated Agricultural District. There's a push and pull at the state level of how much.
Boy, there sure is.
Yeah.
There sure is. One side wants to have a think, a heavier weight on agricultural soils of certain types, and the other side just wants to move straight ahead with green energy projects at all costs. Does that make sense?
It does. I do think that there is a balance to what that formula is. Not sure, but I guess the ideal utopian situation would be a solar project that adds value-added income to offset expenses, losses, bad crop seasons for active farming operations, and allows young farmers the opportunity to cultivate lands that are conducive to farming, because farmers aren't getting any younger, and finding that next generation to step in that's willing to do a job where you're not going to get a vacation when you're a farmer. That's part of the challenge, and I think solar can help offset that and supplement that agricultural lifestyle and living. But is solar panels on 100% of a farm, is harvesting the sun, quote farming? Probably not. It's a form of supplementing, so it's finding that balance.
And the state, when I say they're involved in the issue, they review the projects and the soils, right?
They do, and we have had some feedback from New York State agri markets with conversations with NYSERDA on a couple of these projects. Also, DEC plays a role when it comes to wetlands. They use helical pile drilling into the wetlands, so it's basically a corkscrew. So there's no soil disturbance, if you will, or scooping action. But to what level do you want to have construction and tree cutting and alterations to hydrology to wetlands take place, and especially a summer like we saw this year, which I'd say is not as bad as it was in 2012, but you'd have to go back to 2012 to find an area where the water table has been as high as it has been this year. It's indicative that wetlands serve a function. They act as a sponge that protects an area from a storm surge. If we look to Yonkers, just outside of New York City, there were examples of that this last week with the tropical storm that came up. Combined sewer overflows not being able to handle the water was actually percolating up from these combined sewer systems. So protection of our wetlands, I think, has got to be critical. Solar projects may not disturb the wetlands, but there's tree cutting activities that may occur, trying to minimize that. Also to preserve the hydrologic functions of those wetlands, I think, is an important consideration at the local level that planning board and its advisory committees need to have with solar projects.
Great. Well, I want to thank the friends for the letter, and John, if we could review it and some of these items, good ideas, maybe we can incorporate some of those ideas into the code. Anyone else that would like to speak on this? Jim, do you have your hand up? Jim, come on up. Yeah, all right. All right, well, come on up.
My name is James Rule. I live at 168 Wooddale Drive, Alston Lake, alias Clifton Park. I would like to just make a few comments. I wanted Susan to go first, so she would kick off the issue of impact and density, because I think that is the crux of the issue which we are concerned with. To say that the solar panels do not have traditional impacts is probably largely true. But what about the impact where a piece of land is forest or agriculture and it's completely covered by this new land use? It's called solar panels. It isn't usable in any traditional way. It's essentially a biological desert underneath the panels, surrounded by a fence which prohibits any other kind of intrusion and having sacrificed any of the uses that are there. I think the issue that we were concerned with, and let me tell you, this issue occupied Friends at quite a few meetings, quite a few discussions. And the issue was, one school said, we don't like solar panels. The other school said, it's inevitable. How can we get a piece of the action for open space? And that's what we're talking about here. We want to be paid to restore some of the open space that that solar panel, solar facility has consumed. It's an alternative. It's not a land grab. It's not a resistance. It's not a say no. It is, we want to be paid to compensate for that loss. And the impact is total. The impact is total in the sense that that field or that area is now totally different. So why not? And I'll tell you, there is a formula. Because myself, Dan Mathias, and a few other people sat around for quite a few hours and devised one. Now this one has a relationship to the residential formula incentive, but it need not. Pilot funds are totally negotiable, and it could be a component of that. The point is, we're looking for some creativity here to get paid for the loss of the open space that these solar panel facilities totally consume on a given time. So I am asking, imploring some open-mindedness on this. And Phil, you have a point in terms of direct comparison. Water, sewage, schools, yeah, solar panels don't have that, but they have a total coverage impact that is unique to this situation, and I think should be entertained, explored by the board in particular, because it is this board that has to deal with that issue. The planning board does not have the power to deal with something this draconian, something this different, and that's exactly what it is. So, thank you.
Well, when you say total coverage, Jim, you know, larger landowners have found land leases from solar projects to be a important source of income, and in some cases it allows them to maintain ownership of their property, as opposed to an option such as development, housing, business development. So when you say total coverage, I mean, somebody might own, I don't know, 100, we'll say 100 acres, and you know, they put solar panels on 15, 20 acres, we'll say. So it certainly isn't the whole of their holdings, their property holdings. It obviously is a contiguous number of panels installed in one particular portion of their property, but it's not the entire property. So how, when you say entire coverage, I mean, how should we try to define that as something that can be put in a town code to help regulate the installation of these solar systems?
Again, you're making a comparison of apples and oranges to a certain extent. I'm saying, measure the apples. How many solar panels do you have out there? 2,000, 3,000? Pay us per panel for compensation for that land that was just consumed.
Oh, so you want to get paid per panel, not necessarily for the amount of acreage.
Right.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a type of installation tax that would then be used to compensate for the loss of that land underneath the panels. And
To compensate who?
compensate the town. Yeah, because, or the fund that is in the CR zone for that acquisition of land that is under the amenity,
Okay.
under the amenity for the residential. So that fund that you get for increasing density under the residential would then be used for the funds that would come from the solar panels to increase that fund for buying of land only in the CR zone. And Tom, you bring up a very good point, and that is this is CR zone specific. The concern in the CR zone is for the increase in density. This tax would be for the change in use, fundamental change in use, which the impact of panels is.
Okay, thank you. I mean, you know, what the Western GIS, as John was talking about, when you take the number of dry acres, and then you can have density based on the amount of dry acreage as part of your total acreage. So this would be a little different than that, obviously, because you're saying from panel 1, we should assess a special tax per panel because of the change in use of it being going from
Whatever.
either passive land or agriculture. It may not be growing anything at the present moment, but you're just saying the change in use from whatever it is now to a green energy project.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you much. Anyone else? All right. It's been a while, Frank. Where you been?
Oh, I've been up north, Frank Berlin, 980 Main Street, from Jonesville, New York. You know where Main Street
Alias Clifton Park.
Yeah. And
All those Clifton Park.
you remember when our good friend Sandy Roth was here?
Yes.
We started this about in the 90s, so I love this discussion because it's not it's something we're doing for our community. That's good. Everybody has a point of view. That I remember Sandy looked at this, and over here we call that spaghetti. It's hit on the east side, and Sandy said he was sitting here. Holy smokes, are we going to have that in the western part of town? And we talked about that green sea, right? And so that's the green sea, and I understand the stars are there and the solar panels are there. And to tell you the truth, I have solar panel electricity for my house, not at my house, but I bought into this 4 or 5 years ago, and I think I got a little bit of a snow job, because it's green and it's farming and it's apple pie and it's mom, and you got to know that if it's too good, you better think about there may be something else. Now, some people don't like to hear the bad side of the story, but I don't even know if there really is a bad side. But I can tell you that putting a barbed wire fence, chain link fence, and a barbed wire fence around the area, I don't think is good for the creatures. So when we say it's not being farmed or it's not being used, well, there's other things that use that, and that's what part of our environment. That's why I've talked about. So I think it's really would be important if we could raise them up, maybe if you put them up. They do that in Columbia County. I saw them in the fields with the farmers there. The cows were going on them. They were pretty high. So if you had to put them in, I'm not saying they're bad, but maybe better ways, If you go to Cape Cod, there's a lot of solar panels on rooftops because they don't want to use their land up, We should push that idea, put them on top of these buildings, Why don't we have them on our town hall and be leaders and show that we can do it and put it on our houses, put it on our parking lots, put it on our telephone poles, and that whole area on the eastern side that's already covered, cover it with solar panels, that's what I mean, push that. Then you're going to have it in the western part too. But I like the idea of looking at all options, And if you put up a solar panel, the water comes off of there and it drips on one side, So I used to live in New Jersey. We never had floods there when I was there. But now we have huge houses, parking lots, driveways, and it happens right here. When the water runs off this roof, it goes out the side, goes down the brook, down the drain, and it goes down to Woodford, you know what I mean? So we're sending that water away. We should have our parking lot should have all the new macadam that allows the water to percolate through. We could have that. So I think we should try to push the idea of putting solar panels where the ground is already covered. And you said, well, there's a lot of money there. Well, if it's such a good deal, why do you have to offer money, give money, tax money for people to do something? You know, it's our dollars, all of us here are paying for all these, giving these people grant money, you know?
They're all subsidized.
I know, and so we say it's subsidized, but it's our money.
Yeah.
So we gotta
It's all
realize
public.
it's not as good as it
It's
sounds,
all public money.
but I like the idea of just talking about it, coming up with some good ideas, because we've come a long way. John, it's a great report, you know, and the board's listening and letting us talk. So I'm really, you know, I think we'll come up with some good ideas. I really do. I really think we'll come up with something that at least we have some idea what's going on here. We're not just letting people put up solar panels wherever they want to, you know. We can't do that. You know, it's a different world today. When I was a kid, you could do whatever you wanted to, you know, dump the garbage in the brook. We did all that kind of stuff. That was the deal. Times have changed, you know. That's what
Well,
happened.
that's good.
Yeah, I know.
We don't do that anymore.
All right, so if you want to ask me any questions, I'm up here. What do you think, Phil?
Frank, you leave me speechless as always.
All right, good, thanks.
But, well, some of the points are well taken, and kind of swerving into, you know, the pros and cons of solar, and should there be solar arrays in the town or in a specific area of town. You know, that's a whole different conversation. I understand there's definitive negatives to green energy in some respects, and we've talked about them here at meetings. And they are all subsidized, as Frank mentioned, with public money. But Frank's also right, they're here to stay. They're going to happen. There are some people in Clifton Park that have been able to benefit from the system as it's currently constructed by New York State and the federal government. And I don't believe we should be in a position to say that nobody in Clifton Park can benefit from this type of opportunity should it present itself. But that being said, thank you. Very good ideas.
I have a question, Phil. Who gets the electricity? I often wondered that. I mean, we provide electricity for, I'm not, again, trying to help other people out, but if other towns say we're putting these in, and you have a big farm area where my solar panels are believed in Columbia County, which kind of bothers me now, because I thought, well, that's all right, it's out there. But what about the people who live there? So I'm getting my electricity from, and so that bothers me a little bit. We're going to use our nice areas, our open space for the creatures, and provide electricity for some place that's got all parking lots and buildings and no phone towers. You know?
Yeah.
Where does that go? Do anybody know that? Where the electricity?
Well, it goes into the grid.
Yeah, and the grid goes to everybody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's like the solar array that we constructed on the town's capital landfill. You know, that energy goes back into the grid.
Which would be a great example for all solar panels to provide a bird, butterfly, and bee habitat.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. We don't want to forget that habitat. And the habitat was free.
That's right.
And the solar farm was free as well. So
That's a nice, pretty good example.
as it turned out. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, any further comments from the board or questions? All right, well, thank you very much, folks. Some great ideas, and we'll certainly take them into account. John, if you could review some of that information that we received here tonight. Any other comments that we've received? Review those as well, and see if there's some things that we can incorporate into our final code that's codified. Okay. All right. With that, we'll close the public hearing. We do have a number of resolutions this evening, right, Teresa?
Yes.
All right.
A resolution authorizing the town board to issue a negative declaration pursuant to secret for a local law to amended zoning regulations for solar energy systems. Whereas the town board has expressed its intent to consider amendments to the zoning ordinance to modify regulations for solar energy systems. And whereas in accordance with the requirements of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, (SEQRA), and town board has determined the environmental impact of this proposed action. And whereas pursuant to 6 NYCRR Part 617.6, the town board is the only agency required to approve the proposed action. And whereas Planning Director John Scotto has prepared a full environmental assessment form for review and acceptance by the town board. And whereas the town board has duly considered all the environmental aspects of the proposed action, now therefore be it resolved, the town board is hereby determined, based upon the environmental assessment form submitted to and reviewed by the board, that the zoning code amendment is a type 1 action, and be it further resolved that the town board adopts the environmental assessment form EAF and approves the completion of parts 1, 2, and 3. And the town board does hereby issue a negative declaration with respect to the proposed action. And be it further resolved that the town supervisor is authorized to sign the completed EAF where required. A resolution scheduling a public hearing to extend the water supply district known as Clifton Park's Consolidated Hydrant District Number 1. Whereas a resolution was adopted by the town of Clifton Park at a regular town board meeting on November 2nd, 1992, establishing a water supply district. And whereas at the adoption of that resolution, certain engineers' plans, reports, and descriptions of said proposed hydrant district and map illustrative thereof were attached to that resolution and made a part thereof. And whereas the district was extended by resolution numbers 176 of 1995, 299 of 2003, and 297 of 2014. And whereas the Clifton Park Water Authority has retained CT Mail to provide certain maps and reports listing properties served by water supply fire hydrants that have been installed since 2014 to provide fire protection coverage to newly developed properties and subdivisions within the town. And whereas the town board wishes to consider a proposal by the Clifton Park Water Authority to extend the district in order to include additional properties within the water supply district as listed on Exhibit A attached, and in the areas described in Exhibit B, which descriptions and lists are attached hereto. And whereas the rate for properties within the proposed extension is 0.202615 per $1,000 in assessed value. Now therefore be it resolved that a public hearing is hereby scheduled to take place on September 20th, 2001 at 7:05 p.m. in the Wood Memorial Meeting Room, 1 Town Hall Plaza, Clifton Park, New York, to receive public comment regarding the proposed alterations of the Consolidated Hydrant District Number 1 boundaries, and the town clerk is directed to publish appropriate notice of same. A resolution accepting the offer of cession for future road dedications within the Park West Plan Development District. Whereas by resolution number 200 of 2018, the town board adopted local law number 5 of 2018 approving the Park West Plan Development District, a planned condominium housing district. And whereas on September 22nd, 2020, the planning board issued a notice of decision approving the site plan conditioned upon the offer of secession for roads and related infrastructure within the development. And whereas Route 146 and 146A Properties LLC has offered to dedicate the properties as described in the attached descriptions to the town, consistent with earlier town board and planning board approval, as well as easements to the proposed homeowners association in the town for sidewalks and stormwater purposes. And whereas legal descriptions and maps relative to the easement dedications are on file in the town clerk's office, now therefore be it resolved that the town board accepts the attached offer of secession for the properties as described, pending final acceptance of the dedication and the roads and infrastructure upon completion, subject to the town attorney's review. A resolution declaring a public emergency pursuant to General Municipal Law, Section 1034, for a repair to a portion of Hollywood Drive due to the stormwater system failure that undermined the Clifton Park Sewer District Number 1 sewer main. Whereas on July 14th, 2021, Collection System Manager Michael O'Brien and Highway Superintendent Dan Cole identified a stormwater system failure in the vicinity of Bear Brook Corridor that resulted in a large sinkhole on the hillside behind 129 Tallowood Drive. And whereas expeditious repairs entailed the emergency repairs to both the stormwater and sanitary sewer systems, and whereas Section 1034 of the New York State General Municipal Law provides that in cases of an emergency situation arising from unforeseen circumstances affecting public property or the health or safety of the public, the town board may authorize the purchase of service, material, and equipment without competitive bids. And whereas Tom Fabricki Company Incorporated was engaged for the repair work at and around 129 Tollerwood Drive on an emergency, excuse me, on an emergency basis pursuant to invoice totals not to exceed $52,442.52 attached, with work completed on July 22nd, 2021. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board determines that the resulting damage to the stormwater and sanitary sewer systems due to the stormwater system failure and the sewer system backup within the Clifton Park Water District, Clifton Park Sewer District Number 1, as determined on July 14, 2021, constitutes an emergency for procurement purposes under Section 1034 of General Municipal Law. Be it further resolved that the comptroller is authorized to split the expenditures between Clifton Park Sewer District Number 1 and highway funds for a total not to exceed $52,442.52, and be it further resolved that the comptroller is authorized to pay an amount not to exceed $37,443 from highway, general construction, emergency repairs, and no more than $15,000 from Clifton Park Sewer District Number 1 emergency repairs for the invoice attached to compensate Tom Fabricki Company Incorporated for the work, and be it further resolved that the comptroller is authorized to transfer $37,443 from the assigned fund balance to highway, general construction, emergency repairs. A resolution authorizing the highway superintendent to install R5 no truck symbol signage at appropriate locations along Tanner Road at Tanner Road and 146 intersection and Tanner Road and 146A intersection. Whereas residents in the Tanner Road area of the town have experienced an increase in commercial truck traffic along the road in both directions connecting routes 146 and 146A. And whereas Clifton Park planning staff have requested New York State DOT does designate routes 146 and 146A as the truck route that commercial vehicles on Tanner Road should be using, except for the local deliveries. And whereas the town of Clifton Park's Highway Safety Committee recommends the installation of authorized signage to restrict cut-through commercial truck traffic along Tanner Road per the 2009 Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, MUTCD, and current New York State supplement to the 2009 MUTCD. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town board authorizes the highway superintendent to install two R5 no truck symbol signs in accordance with MUTCD and the current New York State supplement to the 2009 MUTCD, and therefore be it resolved that the town highway superintendent contact the Saratoga County Sheriff's Department and the New York State Police to request enforcement for compliance with no commercial truck traffic. A resolution to set and approve the offer of just compensation to property owners adjacent to the CMAC, and that's Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program, Road Road Multi-Use Path Gap Closure, PIN 1760.82. Whereas by resolution number 2 of 2019, the town authorized a professional service agreement with Freeman Peterson for preliminary design work with subsequent approvals for more advanced engineering design for a pedestrian safety improvement project in the vicinity of the existing Moe Road Trail. And whereas by resolution number 100 of 2021, the town accepted federal aid and state Marchicelli program grant funding for pedestrian improvements and safety to close the existing gap along the Moe Road multi-use path. And whereas Freeman Peterson recommends the acquisition of certain real property for right-of-way and utility purposes for the advancement of the project at recommended purchase prices attached. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board approves the acquisition of the property interests as listed in the attached just compensation letters for Freeman Peterson, and authorizes the supervisor to sign the attached offers to the listed property owners for the project. A resolution scheduling a public hearing to consider an application for the term conservation easement program. Whereas the town's term conservation easement program requires public comment on properties proposed to be included in the program, and whereas Paul and Joanne Coons have requested inclusion in the program for property on Mail Road Now therefore be it resolved that a public hearing is scheduled for September 20th, 2020 at 7:10 p.m. in the Wood Memorial Room, 110 Hall Plaza, Clifton Park, New York, to consider the property owned by Paul and Joanne Coons on Mill Road for inclusion in the conservation easement program for 25 years. And be it further resolved that the property owner give notice to all adjacent property owners and other entities as provided in the town's conservation easement legislation in advance of the public hearing, and submit receipts of mailing to the town clerk's office prior to the date of the public hearing. And be it further resolved, the town clerk is directed to publish appropriate notice of same. A resolution accepting quotes for landscape work and fencing along a portion of the newly constructed trail in the Crescent Woods subdivision, whereas quotes were received by the Buildings and Grounds Department for fence installation and tree plantings per the attached quote to reduce visual impact to surrounding landowners of a multi-use path on town-owned land from Patriot Circle to the Crescent Woods subdivision. And whereas the lowest conforming quote for the landscaping services was submitted by Clover Meadow Farm LLC 92, I'm assuming that's Hubbs Road. Hubbs Road? I think it might be Hubbs Road. Okay, Hubbs Road, Rexford, New York. In an amount not to exceed $6,335, and whereas the lowest conforming quote for the fence installation was submitted by Mariahville Fence 61, Blue Barnes Road, Rexford, New York, in an amount not to exceed $5,985. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board hereby awards the contracts to Clover Meadow Farm for landscape services and Mariahville Fence for fencing along the trail in the Crescent Woods subdivision at a total cost not to exceed $12,340 to be charged from Community Development Fund trees. A resolution authorizing the Clifton Park Town Court to apply for a Justice Court Assistance Program grant, whereas the Clifton Park Town Court wishes to acquire a file cabinet, intercom, backup computer batteries, and fireproof filing cabinets, and whereas the Justice Court Assistance Program was established by the legislature to provide a means by which town and villages may obtain limited state funding to improve operations of their justice courts. And whereas the Clifton Park Town Court wishes to apply for a grant of approximately $17,500 from the Justice Court Assistance Program to purchase the aforementioned equipment to improve the operations at the Clifton Park Town Court. Now therefore be it resolved that the Clifton Park Town Board authorizes the Clifton Park Town Court to apply for a grant of approximately $17,500 from the Justice Court Assistance Program in the 2021-2022 grant cycle. And be it further resolved that the supervisor is authorized to execute all necessary documents in support of such efforts. And be it further resolved that the comptroller is instructed that upon approval of this grant request, review revenue shall be increased by $17,500 from New York State grant revenue, and expenditures shall be increased by $17,500 to be paid from Justice Court office supplies. Resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign contracts with the 2021 subcontract hires. Whereas Mila Kramer, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Affairs, has requested the town board authorize contracts for certain recreation programs, and whereas the town board supports continuation of the listed recreation programs or contractors listed on Schedule A attached. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board is hereby authorized to sign the attached contracts with Dana Zakhareski and Angela Barrett of Arts and Glass as 2021 recreation subcontractors to be paid from recreation contractors. A resolution authorizing the purchase of a skid steer snowblower attachment for Buildings and Grounds Department from Clark Equipment Company under New York State contract PC 69396, whereas Director of Buildings, Parks and Recreation Daniel Clemens has requested authorization for the purchase of a 32 by 86 snowblower for the Buildings and Grounds Department for the attached. And whereas the equipment is available under New York State contract PC 69396 in an amount not to exceed $5,982.72, including motor package and dealer assembly charges. And whereas Mr. Clements has requested that the snowblower be purchased to best meet the needs of the department. And whereas the equipment is available from Clark Equipment Company, DBA Bobcat Company, Government Sales, West Fargo, North Dakota. Now therefore be it resolved that the Buildings and Grounds Department is authorized to purchase one 32 by 86 snow blower per the attached, and be it further resolved that the town board hereby authorizes the purchase under state contract number PC 693961 an amount not to exceed $5,982.72 to be paid with funds from Brooklyn Common Equipment Building. A resolution authorizing the sale of equipment declared surplus by the town board and authorizing departments to sell their surplus equipment at public auction. Whereas Daniel Clemens, Director of Buildings, Parks and Recreation, has identified a 2004 Chevrolet 2500 HG pickup truck and a 2006 GMC Canyon as surplus property due to aging frames that are considered uneconomical to repair. And whereas based upon the recommendation of Mr. Clemens, the town board declares that the 2004 Chevrolet and the 2006 GMC vehicles as surplus. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board authorizes the Buildings and Grounds Department to sell the surplus equipment as is through an upcoming online public auction. A resolution authorizing a change order to add the replacement of all 4-inch vent piping required for the new boilers being installed at the Senior Community Center at the P&J Mechanical, by the P&J Mechanical. Whereas by resolution number 139 of 2021, the town board authorized the installation of new boilers at the Clifton Park Senior Community Center, whereas P&J Mechanical has submitted a change order for the project in the amount of $6,623. And whereas Daniel Clemens, Director of Buildings, Parks and Recreation, recommends that the town authorize the change order after the need for new pipes became apparent after the old boilers were removed. Now therefore be it resolved that a change order adding $6,623 to the contract price for the new boilers project at the Senior Community Center is approved. And Daniel Clemens, Director of Buildings, Parks and Recreation, is authorized to accept the attached proposal from P&J Mechanical at 9 Crane Boulevard, Rensselaer, New York, at a cost not to exceed $6,623. The funds to come from H-Pins Community Center equipment.
H-Pins Community Center. All right, thank you. We had quite a few tonight.
Thank you.
Any questions on the resolution?
There should be 2 more.
Oh, oh, I did?
Oh, sorry. Sorry. I flipped them all.
Oh,
Okay. Sorry about that. A resolution authorizing the hiring of a laborer for the Buildings and Grounds Department, whereas an opening exists for a laborer in the Buildings and Grounds Department transfer station with the transfer of Keith Albany, and whereas Daniel Clemens, Director of Buildings, Parks and Recreation, has advised that Robert Lake Ford, Twinburg Court, Clifton Park is qualified and recommended that he be hired to fill the full-time position as advertised. Now therefore be it resolved that authorization is hereby given to hire Robert Lake as a laborer for the Building and Grounds Department. Grade 3, Step 1, $19.44 an hour, effective immediately. Be it further resolved that the comptroller is authorized to transfer $12,900 from transfer station K. Ulrich to transfer station R. Lake. A resolution hiring motor equipment operator in the Clifton Park Highway Department. Whereas Dan Bull, Highway Superintendent, wishes to hire a new motor equipment operator, MEO, for the Highway Department due to an opening that exists, and whereas Mr. Bull has conducted interviews and driving record reviews and has recommended the hiring of Sean Gilbert, 19 J Street, Waterford, New York. Now therefore be it resolved that Sean Gilbert be hired as MEO, grade 5, step 1, year 1, and paid at a rate of $23.99 an hour, effective September 20th, 2021, and be it further resolved that the comptroller transfer $14,394 from Highway Fund General Construction D. Pettis to Highway Fund General Construction S. Gilbert, and $5,263 from Highway Fund Snow Removal D. Pettis to Highway Fund Snow Removal S. Gilbert to be allocated based on the attached schedule. And now that's all.
Bob and Sean would have been disappointed.
I know.
Sorry, we missed the resolution. Come back next week. All right, you can read that.
Sure. Resolution number 2004 of 2021, a resolution authorizing the town board to issue a negative declaration pursuant to seeker for a local law to amend zoning regulations for solar energy systems.
Second.
By Mr. Morelli, second by Mrs. Flood. Discussion. Get to it.
Councilwoman Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wallowitz? Yes. Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 205 of 2021, a resolution scheduling a public hearing to extend the water supply district known as Clinton Park Consolidated Hydrant District Number 1.
So moved. Second.
By Mrs. Standard, second by Mrs. Flood. Discussion.
Councilwoman Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wallowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 206 of 2021, a resolution accepting the offer of concession for future road dedications within the Park West Planned Development District.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Flood, second by Mr. Morelli. John, anything to add here?
Yes, I'll note, this was a requirement of the planning board based on staff recommendation that an offer of session be offered to the town board. What an offer of session is, and I would say the applicable part is if you look at Black's Law, it says the act by which a party transfers property to another. It's as simple as that. Unfortunately, when you think back to elementary school, session means ceding part of a country to somebody else. That's not the case here. It's the transfer of property. Offers of session are a tool that were used with early zoning codes in the 1960s. And I'll tell you the reason why. I'm going to read a scholarly article from 1955. Just a quick statement from Professor Epps at Cornell University at the time. One of the legal issues that they noted in 1955 that was never adjudicated at that time is the obligation of the legislative body to accept title to streets which have been approved by the planning board, graded or otherwise improved by the subdivider at the board's direction and offered for dedication. Although practically all statutes state the approval of the plat does not constitute acceptance of the street dedication, it may be assumed that a subdivider, if they have acted in good faith, the legislative body would be compelled to accept his offer of session for streets improved according to the specification of the planning board. Tom could attest that it has been adjudicated since 1955, and no dedication is not accepted based on the planning board approving a plat in good faith and then a builder building it in good faith. It's truly at the board's discretion. So this is a pretty large project that was first approved as a PDD, then approved by the planning board as site plan approval. Site plan approval maps do not get filed at the county. As part of the transfer of the title at a later date, there will be a map filed, in effect transferring or subdividing out the public infrastructure. This is basically setting the stage for the legal descriptions now that will sit in the file and be ready to go and executed at the time that the project is built out. Folks have occupied these structures in accordance with our code. Again, not knowing who that end builder was going to be at the time, I just think for continuity purposes, it was the right steps to do to, one, alert the future builder of who that may be. And it looks like the original applicant will still be involved with the project, which is good because they had the ability to just sell the approved project for somebody coming in, trying to figure out on the back end, what do I need to do to dedicate this? If we do get that question on the back end, we can open the file, say, here's the legal descriptions, show us the as-built as part of the punch list towards dedication. And the resolve really states that until completed, for acceptance. So the offers of session are just setting the stage for a future dedication, alerting this board as part of its record going forward that at some point in the future, once the project's been built out the execution of these documents for official dedication will occur.
Very good. Okay. Any further, any questions on the board?
I have some comments.
Yep.
So John was nice enough to inform me about what all this was about. I know that when this PED started, we were talking about private roads. They're going to become public roads. So, you know, I think someone today, Bill yourself, you said we have to assess current conditions and prepare for future needs, which is good because that's what we need to try planning to do. When we take ownership of the roads that are dedicated in this PDD, we're going to be taking 2.24 lane miles. Now, this is where things get really exciting. This corner is pretty interesting because we only have, sorry, no, the map helps me. That corner, we have one plow truck up there. Now, that plow truck does Sherwood Forest, Dawson Lane, it does Brookhaven, and Sterling Heights. It takes that plow truck about 3.5 hours to perform those processes. All those neighborhoods put together is 10.1 lane miles. Doesn't seem like much, but it takes us that amount of time to plow that. So when we take over Park West, let's add 2.24 miles. That's almost a quarter of the time, if we're just doing it simply. But you got to look around that area too. We're also taking over Vista West, that's a 0.5 lane mile. We're taking over Honey Hollow, that's 1.3 lane miles. We're also taking over the Brooks 146 subdivision, which is 1.2 miles, and then the Riggy subdivision, which is 1.4 lane miles. That's about 6.7 additional lane miles in the next 2 years. That's adding that to that plow route. We're now almost doubling that plow route from 10 miles to over 17 miles. So currently that route is at 3.5 hours. Almost doubling it is going to really throw it up in the air. So I just want the town board to understand that when we start looking at these subdivisions, we start doing the math, and our plow routes, as they get bigger, they get longer in duration to take care of, which means bodies and trucks. So I just want to put that on the table. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Teresa?
Councilwoman Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Malloy? Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 207 of 2021, a resolution declaring a public emergency pursuant to the General Municipal Law 1034 for repair to a portion of Hollywood Drive due to a stormwater system failure that undermined a Clifton Park Sewer District Number 1 sewer main. So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Mrs. Flood. This was a stormwater situation over in the Talwood neighborhood, down the embankment in the back there that compromised the portion of the sewer system that serves the neighborhood. It was an emergency repair, rather expensive. What was the timetable for this once we were alerted to finishing the work?
Wait, so you want to know how long it took us to finish the work, or the time it took us to respond to it?
From the timetable that you were alerted that there was an issue to when the work was completed, yeah.
So it would have been
Roughly.
It would have been like in the resolution says, July 22nd to July 14th, so a little over 8 days.
Good. Anything else?
No, that's it. We just
Okay.
piggybacked off of Mike O'Brien's emergency contract. Once again, both departments worked incredibly well together. We did have the contract shoring because everything was so deep, and contracting heavy equipment that we don't have and operators that we don't have. And that's where that money comes from.
Yep, so it was an expensive fix, but obviously necessary, and hopefully that area will be good for a while. You also have a memo from Mike O'Brien as well. Mike could not be here at the meeting this evening. Any questions, discussion? Okay, Teresa?
Councilwoman Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Malloy?
Yes.
Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 208 of 2021, a resolution authorizing the highway superintendent to install an R52 no trucks symbol signage at appropriate locations along Tanner Road at Tanner Road and Route 146 intersection and the Tanner Road and 146A intersection.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Mr. Morelli. Want to thank the Highway Safety Committee for their continued work for the town of Clifton Park. John, did you want to add anything here?
Yes, the Town Highway Safety Committee, town staff, which includes our highway superintendent, we've been working with residents on Tanner Road who have seen an increase in traffic in terms of commercial truck vehicles, and we've observed commercial vehicles basically heading from 146 up Tanner Road to 146A instead of what we're recommending as a truck route to the roundabout. And then they're taking right on 146A to use Kins Road to get to 9 North. So they're bypassing, the 146 in 9 corridor, especially within our town center. As the supervisor mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, New York State DOT has approved $12 million to look at those intersections within that town center area to improve efficiencies and safety improvements. But what happens is when a state route, the level of service and delays become impaired, the vehicle traffic finds other routes that are quicker, and they're using a local road system in this example. So this is basically encouraging commercial traffic, at least, to stay on the state highway route as a primary transportation corridor. The other thing is the algorithms. If somebody uses Waze, it's proprietary, so Google Maps, your iPhone app for directions, the algorithms will find the quickest route. Again, commercial truck traffic should be using commercial grade GPS systems. That will direct them away from routes like Carlton Road. But if you're using a residential Garmin or TomTom passenger vehicle unit, it won't make that distinction and send you down roads that you really shouldn't belong on. So we're hoping that.
Saw that today.
Yes. So we're hoping that the signage here too, again, while drivers have to obey signage, there's some positive guidance that will be picked up with the algorithms from these companies that provide directions to truck routes, and that will be a benefit to the transportation corridor.
Very good. Discussions with the folks along that road, I know they've been thinking, trying to track if there was a particular source of what they see as additional traffic, truck traffic on the road. Was there did you have any information about that?
Not one specific source. They did see, and I think part of it could be with folks at home for the summer, an increase in landscaping vehicles, in commercial grade utility trailers being towed behind vehicles. Our highway superintendent brought up a great observation in terms of air quality, that the slower these larger vehicles run, the louder they are, because they basically have a second engine or incinerating device on them, that more soot is created through lower combustion at a lower speed, which then takes a secondary heating unit to burn off the additional carbon, if you will, so it's louder. So the effect is people are more aware of vehicles traveling at 30 miles an hour down a rural residential road than they would be if that same vehicle was going 45 miles an hour. Dan just said it sounds like a freight train at that lower speed. So that's something that is, as air quality standards increase, again, we talked about what's changed over the last 10 years. That's an observation that's changed into folks, as vehicles going faster because they're louder. It's actually just the opposite.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion? Okay. Teresa?
Councilwoman Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Stander?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Malowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 209 of 2021, a resolution to set and approve the offer of just compensation to property owners adjacent to the CMAC Road, Mow Road, multi-use path gap closure. So moved. Second?
Moved by Mrs. Flood, second by Mrs. Standart. This is a project we've been working on for quite some time now. Getting closer, John, with this step being concluded.
Yes, sir. The town board has already approved the grant award and the budget amount. The just compensation offers are well within the budget amount for the right-of-way line item. But because the town will be making fair market value offers to landowners, either for the fee title portion of their land, small portion for the construction of the multi-use path, or a temporary easement towards that construction, we need to authorize specifically these dollar amounts that can be made to the individual property owners.
Okay, very good. Further discussion?
It'll be great to move this forward. A lot of interest in it.
Yeah.
You know, affects a lot of pedestrian traffic. So.
Teresa?
Councilwoman Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Stander?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Malowitz? Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 210 of 2021, a resolution scheduling a public hearing to consider an application for the term conservation easement program.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Ms. Malowitz. John, anything to add here?
No, this is a standard practice that as the conservation easements are due for renewals, resolutions are put forward to just continue the program.
Walter, any,
No, this is a
anything to add to this?
pretty standard request for a new conservation easement. It's vacant land, and it's down on Mail Road, which is pretty rural. Minimal impact with the assessment roll or anything. It's a minor.
And we do welcome new applicants, so
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
definitely a good sign. We have very successful program that provides tax breaks to larger landowners that agree not to develop their property over a specific term, 15, 20, or 25 years. What's the current acreage that we have still holding steady?
Yeah, we're pretty steady. Yep, we've had some renewals that didn't renew, so I haven't checked the acreage recently, but it's still pretty steady. Most of the conservation easements do renew. So we're gonna have a few new ones come in this year, so we'll probably be right back where we were a few years ago.
Which was around, what, 2,000 acres?
Yeah, it's around 2,000 acres.
Yeah. So having around 2,000 or about 2,000 acres in the program at any one time is great for the town and definitely been a successful program. Any discussion? Okay. Teresa?
Councilwoman Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Stander?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Malowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 211 of 2021, a resolution accepting quotes for landscape work and fencing along a portion of newly constructed trail in the Crescent Woods subdivision.
Moved by Mr. Morelli, second by Ms. Walowitz. This is an item we've been working on to provide some additional screening for residents in this direct area that will be fairly close to a new multi-use path. John, any further details?
Yes, it truly is an effort on the town lands to construct some visual screening to buffer visual impacts to the rear yards of adjacent properties. We've done similar projects with the West Sky Trail and on the Carlson Farm subdivision over the last decade and a half, where these neighborhood connections serve a vital purpose to the community, but at the same time there's one or two residents that's always impacted to a greater extent than everybody else in terms of when you clear that land and construct that multi-use path to the rear directly adjacent to somebody's property.
Yeah, so we want to be good neighbors, and I think this is definitely a good project. Been working on it for most of the year. So thank you for your legwork on that, as well as Dan Clemens. Any discussion, questions? Okay, Teresa?
Councilwoman Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Walloway? Supervisor Barry?
Yes.
Resolution number 212 of 2021, a resolution authorizing the Clifton Park Task Force to apply for a Justice Court Assistance Program grant. So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Mrs. Flood. This is a request from our judges to move forward with the grant request. Teresa?
Councilwoman Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Walloway?
Yes.
Supervisor Barry?
Yes.
Resolution number 213 of 2021, a resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign contracts with the 2021 subcontract hires.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Mrs. Flood. Lori, how are we doing tonight?
So we're doing good, Just got back from vacation, so I'm fresh.
Yes, good, good. Well, I hope it was fun. I'm sure it was.
It was.
Not as fun as being here, but
No,
Right,
not fun
yeah.
being here. So we have two subcontractors. One we've had before, Angela Barrett with Arts and Glass, and she's going to offer some programs for our children when they're off of school for superintendent conference days. And then the other program is for Columbus Day. It's a new program, Learn to Skate. We're working with the Ice Arena and Capital and Ice Arena, and we're going to do some Learn to Skate programs, we hope. So we haven't done that in a while, so
yeah.
good programs.
Well, learn to swim, learn to skate, all important programs. I do want to state for the record that Angela Barrett is no relation to me. So in case anybody's wondering if we're hiring one of my family members, we are not. Okay. Any discussion, question for Lori?
Councilwoman Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Walloway?
Yes.
Supervisor Barry?
Yes.
Resolution number 214 of 2021, a resolution authorizing the purchase of a skid steer snow blower attachment for the Buildings and Grounds Department from Clark Equipment Company under New York State Contract PC 69396.
Moved by Mr. Morelli, second by Ms. Wallowit. I guess this means we're getting snow this year, Dan?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we're gonna get some snow, so this is a pretty large snow blower attachment that goes on our new larger machine. It's over 7 feet wide. So it'll make quick work of the 20 plus miles of trails that we keep clear during the winter time. And we have a two-pronged issue here like I usually try to do. Our old snow blower is smaller with a smaller attachment, which we're gonna be able to use at the transfer station to get in around the hoppers. Right now we're doing it with a shovel and a small hand walk behind snow blower. So 2 for the price of 1 kind of deal, which is always a good thing.
Very good. And the attachment that we purchased so you could more efficiently and effectively cut back vegetation along some of these trails. How did that work this year?
Oh, that's been going good. We're using it just about every day. It's been a really nice piece of equipment to have. In the past, we've had to get on the schedule of the highway department, have them come and do it. They have enough of their own to do. So it's been good. We've cut back miles and miles so far, and as the fall goes, it's a better time to brush hog even more. So we're going to keep on going until it's time to use a snow blower.
Yeah, unfortunately. All right. Any questions for Dan? Teresa?
Councilwoman Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Walloway?
Yes.
Supervisor Barry?
Yes.
Resolution number 215 of 2021, a resolution authorizing the sale of equipment declared surplus by the town board and authorizing departments to sell the surplus equipment at public auction. So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Flood, second by Mrs. Standard. Okay.
Again, no, we use these things right up to the point where the rust has gotten to the point where they won't pass New York State inspection. So therefore, we can't keep them on the road. They're not safe to operate. So it's time to declare them surplus, and somebody will want the engine or something out of it, because they both still run pretty good, but you just can't drive them and operate them anymore.
Yeah, we did purchase a couple of replacements recently.
We did, and an update to our new trucks that we ordered back in January that have been delayed. They should be here this week.
This one,
Yes, I talked to the dealer, and they're supposed to have 2 for us and 1 for the highway department. They're bringing this week.
Well, that's good. Teresa?
Councilwoman Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sandberg?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Walloway? Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 216 of 2021, a resolution authorizing a change order to add the replacement of all 4-inch vent piping required for the new boilers being installed at the Senior Community Center by P&J Mechanical.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Mrs. Flood. Dan?
Yeah, so this is something you couldn't tell until you actually started the job and took things apart. So they're 4-inch double-walled stainless steel vent pipe that exhausts these 2 boilers, and there's quite a bit. They're all in short pieces. You put them together and have a seal that's built right into each piece of pipe. And when we took it apart, they were all dried out as a silicone. They kind of like turned into powder, fell on the floor. So it can't be reused, otherwise you'll get exhaust gases filling the building. So like everything else has gone up in price lately. Stainless steel, it's hard to get. We got a 35-day shipping time to even get this material. So it's gotta have it, and didn't know it until we took it apart.
Yeah, obviously, it's well known, many materials have been delayed and have unfortunately delayed projects, so. All right, keep us up to date as to when that gets completed.
Several of them.
Councilwoman Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sandberg?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Walloway?
Yes.
Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 217 of 2021, a resolution authorizing the hiring of a laborer for the Buildings and Grounds Department.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Flood, second by Mrs. Standard. Mr. Legg has been a seasonal employee of the town for several years and applied for this position. What would you like to say about Mr. Legg, Dan?
Yeah, all about, kind of, like you said, he's been with us about 3 or 4 seasons. And he's a very smart, hardworking guy, learns really fast, very dedicated, a reliable guy. He stepped into the transfer station opening down there as a seasonal guy when Keith went to the senior center. And he had no problem going right down there and doing whatever was asked of him. And that's always been the way Bob's been since the first day he got here. He finds things to do all on his own, too. You don't have to stay on top of this guy ever. He's a very motivated guy. And so far, so good down there. I'm sure if you've been there, you've seen him at the booth with his 15 seconds of positive interaction that he likes to give to everybody. So Bob's very methodical and thinks things through, and it's going to be great to keep him around year round. Excited.
Oh yeah, now go down at least a couple times a week while on the job. Been there many times in recent weeks on personal business, but yeah, he has done a very good job as a seasonal employee and as somebody filling in for Keith. So I think Bob's perfect for that spot. Okay. Any discussion? Questions? Teresa?
Councilwoman Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sandberg?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Walloway? Yes. Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 218 of 2021, a resolution hiring a motor equipment operator in the Clifton Park Highway Department. So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Mr. Morelli.
So we still have one vacancy
How are ya?
open.
How are you?
And we have with us today Mr. Sean Gilbert. Mr. Sean Gilbert is a Class B operator, and he has experience with local municipality and the sewer department, operates a vac truck. We were talking earlier about the importance of having firefighters on our team. Well, so is Mr. Gilbert. He's a fire chief, certified in CPR, and has previously worked as an EMT, so we're glad to have him aboard that way. He doesn't realize it yet, but we volunteered him for the safety committee.
Voluntold.
Voluntold, yeah. See, fire service.
Do you keep your gear in the truck at all times?
Keep my truck outside.
All right.
Alright.
That's what we need to know. All right, very good. Any questions, comments?
Councilwoman Clark?
Yes.
Councilwoman Stander?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wallowitz? Yes. Supervisor Curry?
Yes, congratulations, welcome.
Appreciate it.
What department are you with?
North side, town of Waterford.
Oh. All right. Any other business to come before the board this evening? Okay. We'll go to public privilege. If you'd like to speak on a town matter, please raise your hand. We'll ask that you come forward, state your name and address for the record, and please keep it to 5 minutes or less. Yes, come on.
Thank you, Supervisor Barrett
Sure.
and town members. My name is Mel Boxer. I think almost everybody here has heard my name before. I just have a couple of questions I was hoping to ask. At the last town board meeting, it was mentioned the rescue funds was brought up as a conversation. And one of the things that I heard was that there is a working group, essentially a committee, that is working on, it sounded like making the decision-making around what those funds are going to be used for. Is that accurate?
We do have a working group, yeah.
And you're saying that?
I'm saying that working group's not making any decisions. It's
Gotcha.
coming up with
With ideas?
recommendations. This board will ultimately make those decisions.
Gotcha. Thank you for the clarification. So I do have a question on that then. How was it decided, or what are the members of that working group? I heard the members named at the last meeting. Is that all of the members that are currently part of that? And if so, who is the representation, say, for like small businesses or our first responders or our farming and agriculture communities?
Well, the working group, as you heard, is made up of many department heads and people that work within the town of Clifton Park.
Right, so staff and elected officials, correct?
Yep. Right.
And so is that to say that we don't have any members directly from those communities that are involved in that working group that are going to be making up
Not at the moment,
recommendations?
no.
And so that is the plan?
We don't have anybody representing those areas involved with the working group at this time.
Is that to say that we will be asking members of those communities
Perhaps.
to step up?
Perhaps.
Perhaps. Okay. So my second question on that is, you had mentioned that you wanted to give an update on where we are in the process of that topic. And so I guess as a community member, what is the process and where can we find it so we know how we can engage?
The process is the town board will make decisions as far as how the money is spent. There's no rush to spend the money, although I think there's some good short-term and some good longer-term opportunities to with the town and to help town operations and infrastructure. So that's ultimately who will make those decisions.
Correct, yeah. So the question is, where can community members find out how they can provide their feedback and suggestions?
People have that opportunity on a consistent basis, and we're working within the guidelines that the federal government gives us as far as what's eligible and what isn't. And we're still waiting for some guidance along those lines. So yeah, it's a fluid process at this point.
So if community members want to provide feedback, the avenues are coming to town board meetings and coming in person to the town hall and sending emails. Is that correct then?
That's usually how people will offer ideas and ask questions. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would just add, I mean, I wouldn't minimize email correspondence to any of the board members. I mean, we could certainly welcome any specific recommendations you
Yeah, sure.
or anyone else in the community may have.
Gotcha. I did have one other question, related to one of the topics that was brought up. And maybe this question is for Dan. I think this was one of the projects that, was for your department. There was a mention of gas pumps. And if I remember correctly, the comment was that there are multiple organizations within the town that use those gas pumps. Can you identify what those organizations are? Just out of curiosity.
Well, it depends on the time and place. If a local municipality, a law enforcement, fire, EMS, any town department, whatever it might be, they ever come to us and say, hey, we're in a bind, we need fuel, we never say no.
Right.
We're always going to find a way to make sure that their vehicles keep running, especially if they're at a public safety or public infrastructure type of situation. We have various fire departments that fuel their trucks there. The county sheriff and the state troopers used to. They don't do it anymore. It's a little easier for them to go through a card-based system, the WIC system,
Sure.
which is nice. But when an ice storm hits and the power's out, the only places that are working are the ones with generators.
Right.
And to the best of my knowledge, still, other than the fire departments that have not yet decommissioned their own fueling stations, ours is the only one in town that has 4,000 gallon tanks of gasoline and 6,000 gallon tanks of diesel. And during the winter, when we're going to have those types of storms, we don't let those get below 3/4 of a tank. We usually get 1 or 2 shipments a week just for those types of cases. So when we're out of power for days on end, and Dan's having trouble Dan won't have trouble now filling those diesel tanks on all the generators. Michael Bryan in the sewer department will have that problem filling those generators. And when the sheriff says, hey, the pumps are down all over town, can we stop? We will have somebody there with a key, making sure that we fill them up.
Gotcha.
And that's why it's such a crucial apparatus.
Right. And it sounded like you had mentioned back, maybe the first time that you had brought this up, as a need or something that needed to be looked at was in 2017.
Yes, probably, yeah.
Has anything been done to maintain it over the last 4 years, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. State DEC has regulations that we have to do this on one day, this every week, this every month, this every year, and we abide by that schedule. It just gets to the point of computer chips go bad, things rust out, and we're the ones that have to maintain it. One of the other tough parts is we're working on a very archaic system. It's called Phoenix. It's something that's rarely used anymore. Usually the only people who use it are in the boonies, like where you fill up your boat on the side of the lake or something. So that's one of the other aspects that we're looking at, because it's almost an analog system, as crazy as it sounds. But for now, everything is in okay shape, but the tanks themselves are getting to the point of end of life. And it's like 20 to 25 years is when we really should start looking to replace them, and they're at 22.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you for the information.
No, thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
But yeah, they're a great community resource, and best to be proactive. And if we can utilize this money for a large ticket item, I think that would be a definitive priority to get that done. All right.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Second by Mrs. Standard.
Councilwoman Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Morelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Baldwin? And Supervisor Barry?
Yes, thank you.
It's official.
Congratulations.
Now you're in trouble.